I'm Pete Rogers, and I am the sales engineer for Catalyst for Avaya. So we're going to talk, about not only SME, which is, small to medium enterprise, and what we call the mid-market, but we'll also talk about enterprise. Since I'm not going to go deep dive into equipment, although there's some slides that have equipment on it, just so we can, kind of show you some things. We'll cover all aspects of from small to large. And when I talk about small, you may have a customer that has 2 phones, or you might have a customer that has 250,000 phones. And we have customers that have 250,000 phones. Just to give you a little bit of a level set, and this isn't a bragging point, it's a kind of just who Avaya is. We're not just into telephones. We're into just about every kind of technology that's out there, and we had Bell Labs, and we're inventing stuff, and we have intellectual property that would just blow your mind. But if I said we had millions and 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 millions times 10 phones out there in the world today, that's what we do. We're known as the phone guys. But if I told you that we were integrated into Facebook, and we're doing, Google data centers, and we're doing all of this social media stuff, and we're doing analytics, and we built the first chip, and we built the first satellite, and we did all of those type of things, that's who we are as well. If you call a 911 center, right, that's us in a lot of cases. So we're doing a lot of things out there you may not even think about. And in the case of ScanSource, you all have, several thousand phones between the US, Europe, and South America that are all Avaya phones, all integrated together. You can pick up the phone and call Europe over your circuits and, and all that kind of stuff. You're a large enterprise that just happens to have Avaya. So you're a microcosm of, of everything that we're doing. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But we'll start off with 101, Telephony 101. Okay, so if I asked you, Jessica, what a trunk is, okay, you would say, I'm not quite sure. So don't be afraid to say, I don't know, Mr. Customer. I'll find out and I'll let you know. Or I'll get my engineer in here and he'll answer that for you. You can't BS a BSer, so if you're sitting in front of a business owner, he normally, to get to that point, he knows his business. So there may be technologies you're not aware of, but what I call that is access. So if I have a business and I need to access that business, I need to call that business. Somehow I need to get into that business over my mobile phone or however I'm calling, and I'm going to do it over what we might call a trunk, and I call that access. And then whenever a call comes into a business, it's going to terminate into something. It just doesn't terminate from my cell phone to a phone. There's something in between. And normally that's a phone system, right? That makes sense. Maybe it's, we don't even think about it. It's a thing sitting in the closet. If you're over by Catalyst and you're walking up to comms and you're going up the ramp, that whole glass wall, if you look behind it, would be all Avaya equipment and data equipment in there, big, big, big. Sometimes somebody will show you in there. But we do servers and software, okay? So if you have a server is as dumb as a stump, right? I can buy an HP server, a Dell server, a Cisco server, or whatever server. Whatever server, it doesn't mean anything until you put software on it, right? And then you ask yourself, Mr. Customer, what kind of software do you want? Do you want IP Office software, or do you want Communication Manager software, or Aura software, or messaging software, or what do you want this server to do? And we'll spend a little bit of time around what all that means. And then devices. So I say access, server, software, and devices. So if I'm sitting in front of a customer, the things I'm thinking about when I'm starting to develop a thought pattern around what I want to sell them, am I an agent for Intelisys, selling trunks and access and services and web and all that kind of stuff? I may just concentrate on, Mr. Customer, do you need any new SIP trunks? And that's all I sell. Or if I'm an Avaya telephony salesperson, I might be talking about is this customer an IP Office, Or is this customer the city of Greenville that's going to need something bigger like an Aura infrastructure? And then when we start talking about devices, it's going to be, how many telephones do you have, Mr. Customer? Which is a stupid question. But eventually you're going to have to ask that question if you're going to sell them something. And then, do you have mobile people that are salespeople out in the field? Or are you using telephones at all? Are you using soft phones on your PC? Do I even need telephones? So we're always going to say what's on the end of that. So you're going to have trunks terminating into something, IP Office or Aura or whatever manufacturer it is, and then you're going to have something on the end of it. Is it a mobile phone? Is it a soft phone on your desktop? Is it a hard phone? Is it analog, digital, or IP? Okay, and you're going to say analog. Who buys analog phones? Well, we'll talk about that because it might make sense. And there's a lot of customers that are out there, that do that. So we're going to talk about kind of those essential things. And no matter what you do in the world, let's say, for instance, I call on my cell phone, I pick up and I go to a website and it says talk to us now, and I push the button and the phone rings and I'm on my iPhone, okay, and someone answers on the far end. That call just somehow got through access to somehow it got to a server to somehow it got to an agent, in that call center. So no matter kind of whatever you do, you're always going to have these 3 or 4 things that are always in play. You might not know it. No matter what you do, you might not know it. But they're always going to be in play. Won't spend a lot of time on this, but it makes a whole lot of sense. So if a customer is buying a small key system, so you guys in ScanSource are going to know the little IP office for SME and mid-market. Okay, and salespeople, you already know, IP office, and you might know Aura. Not everybody buys T1s and PRIs and SIP. I'm just a small business, and I just have 2 lines. I'm a pizza store, and I've got 5 lines, or I'm a whatever, and I'm just a small business in downtown Greenville. And I don't need a whole lot of fancy. I just need to have a few people being able to call at any one time. So I might sell loop start, ground start trunks to that customer, right? And it's a type of trunk as a salesperson that you have to know, just knowing the phone company stuff. This is 101, really. I mean, you guys have been doing this for a very long time. Now, I would ask you guys, the experienced salesperson, why would you need a ground start trunk? And in what cases would you use a ground start trunk?
They were used back in the 90s on PBXs, large systems. Mm-hmm. They provided a more positive or more assured disconnect when a call terminated. So for security, with a system with voicemail, you wanted ground start so that when Yvette hung up the phone, there was a clear disconnect rather than the dial tone remaining open.
Right, exactly. So in most key systems, you have a telephone that has buttons on, line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, right? And I go to pick up the phone and I go to get an outside line. I can see buttons flashing. I'm not going to grab that line because someone's on it. I'm not going to grab that line, but there's a free line. I push the line, nobody's on it, it's very easy. So in a key system, loop start trunks, which is just a technology, is very good. But if I'm in a larger key system where I've got 30 lines and 40 lines, but I only have 12 buttons on my telephone, I can't see everybody on the, that's on the phone. Okay, so I'm going to dial 9 to get an outside line potentially. And I don't know if anybody's on that line or isn't on that line, but so the phone system will go out to grab a line. Well, you think a phone system should be smart enough to know if a line is available. But if the line was just hung up, and then the system's trying to grab that line, it gets confused. And you might, there might be an incoming call and an outgoing call at the same time, and they'll run into each other and they'll go, dang, I didn't call you. Who is this? Because you're 2 of you are on the line all of a sudden. You might have had that happen to you in the past on your home phone line, because those are loop start lines. But with DID, to your point, Peter, when you hang up, it's got to hang up all the way to the central office, and And when I go to dial 9, it sends a ground to the central office. The central office says, I understand, and it provides you dial tone. So there's a real distinction in loop start or ground start. Most of you don't even have to care from a sales perspective. It's kind of like, what do you have today, Mr. Customer? Well, I don't have anything. Well, how many lines are you going to have? 2 or 3? Well, you're not going to go into a PRI, and you're not necessarily going to have DID if you have 2 or 3 lines. That just doesn't happen that way. If I'm a sales office and I don't have a receptionist, and I want calls to come into my business, but I want them to ring right onto my desk, then I would use a direct in-dial trunk, okay? If I have a receptionist where a call comes in, it always stops at the receptionist, and the receptionist transfers the call to the desk, I don't really need DID lines because I don't have my own I got an extension 123, but I don't have 864-286-1234. Okay, I might have just an extension. But if I want to give you an 864, what's your phone number?
It's a different area code because I'm used
No, in the office here.
I don't even know.
Oh, yeah, you're the new guy, right? Lauren, what's your phone number in the office? 4450. So you can call the main number for ScanSource, and you're going to get a receptionist. But if you know Lauren and you need to do business with Lauren, why would I stop at the receptionist desk before I go back to Lauren? I can just walk straight back to Lauren, right? That makes sense, right? Lauren has a DID number, so you might get a block of DID numbers. So in the case of ScanSource, you might have 5,000 DID numbers to support the 3,000, telephones that you have, or however many you have. And so, you can still have a receptionist and have DID numbers. Now, DID is good. It's a good thing, because if you did time and motion study of a person calling in, stopping at the receptionist stopping what he or she's doing, and then having to transfer the call, and then the call transferred back to the receptionist, and then the receptionist says he's not at his desk, that all takes a lot of effort, and there's no reason for that effort, So a DID, if I can call you right to your desk, that's a good thing. Now what we have is T1 and PRI. Now PRI is the newer technology out of the two, and I won't get into 23 compared to 24 or, all that kind of stuff. But let's say, for instance, a loop start line has a pair of wires. That's a pair is 2, right? A pair of shoes, a pair of wires. I don't know why I looked at you and said pair of shoes.
I like shoes.
Yeah, you look like you like shoes. But anyway, we got a pair of wires. So if I had 12 loop start lines, I'd need 12 pairs of wires, which is 24 pieces of wire coming into a building, right? Now, so to get 12 lines, I'm going to need 12 pairs of wires. Now, if I have a T1 or a PRI, it only takes 2 pairs to get 24 lines. Okay, so it's in some cases, it will save you, the phone company, a lot of money, because they only have to provision 2 pairs of wires instead of 12 or 24, all right? But probably what's most important is that in a phone system, if I have loop start, ground start cards in the system, I'm going to have to put a whole bunch of cards in the system, because every trunk takes a port, and I'm going to need, if I have 12, I might need 3 cards. Where with a PRI or a T1, I only need 1 card. Or I might need 1 card for 2 T1s. So I'm going to save space in my phone system for other things that I need, like telephones and things like that, and I won't have to pay as much. So you kind of look at these things, what's, from a salesperson's perspective, what is the best circuit that you could possibly have, So those are wires, and then we have something called SIP. It's the newest trunking capability. So for instance, in T1 and PRI, I might get stuff like caller ID. I might have some other technologies about hanging up calls and receiving calls and that kind of thing, because it sends information down the line. But now with SIP, it's almost like taking a data circuit, like an internet circuit, and putting it into your phone system. I'm not only going to see, who's calling in, but I'm going to possibly have your status of whether or not you're on the phone, or we're going to have some sort of presence, like if I look at my phone and I can see that that you're on your phone, or we're going to get additional information besides caller ID. SIP is a new Ethernet type circuit that's coming into your phone system that has a lot more information. And instead of having two pairs of wires that bring in, let's say, 23 or 24 lines, I can just tell the phone company on my SIP trunk to I need 48, I need 56, I need whatever. So I can expand and contract my SIP trunk or my SIP line a lot easier than I can with either analog, which takes one pair for every circuit, T1, which takes 23 or 24 for each two pairs. With SIP, I can do a lot more with it. So that's the newer technology, and you'll hear much more about that if you sell those. Does anybody have you sold SIP trunks?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's your value proposition when you're selling SIP trunks? What does it do for customers?
Well, you mentioned the phone system. It doesn't take up any real estate.
Right.
So you don't have cards.
That's good.
From a functional standpoint, it's the functionality of a PRI.
Mm-hmm.
So call by call, inbound, outbound, with direct dial. And it's the least expensive phone service available
And it's
by
the
far.
future.
Huh?
It's the future.
It's the future. So we don't know what we don't know, So
I mean, AT&T, for instance, as a network provider, doesn't even sell PRIs.
Right.
Yeah.
You
They
can't
only
get
offer
them.
SIP.
Right. So SIP is used for a lot of things, especially when we start to look at mobility phones and pushing out apps to cell phones and things like that. And we'll talk more about that as well. Any questions about trunks? So the only way I can call a business, to see, what's on the menu, is to come into that business on a trunk. So whenever you call, it doesn't end up there magically. It comes in on a trunk line. And it probably terminates on a phone system. And by the way, for people that are selling out there in the world, new guy, and you've been doing this for a while, just about in the U.S., 1 out of 4 phone systems as you're driving down the road is an Avaya phone system. That's a pretty big market. So if you're into going out and selling maintenance contracts on phone systems, doing adds, moves, and changes on phone systems, upgrading and migrating on phone systems, you could do it on a competitor's phone system that might be 1 out of 10 phone systems out there belong to them, or 1 out of 20, 1 out of 30, depending on how long they've been in the business. Or you could do 1 out of 4. I think I'd rather think about, just about every place I walk into, you start looking, at the reception desk, start looking when you go to, walk into the restaurant, things like that, you're going to see more and more and more Avaya phones because we got a whole bunch of phones out there, right? So that's kind of why, some people not only carry Avaya, but they may carry other products as well, all right? It's not bragging, it's just the way it is. So we talked about access. The fourth, what are the 4 things?
Access, server, software, and endpoints.
Okay, so access, server, software, and devices. Endpoints. Back in the day, we called them terminals because the telephones did much more than just phone calls. We could run BRI lines through them and hook up computers to the back of a phone and things of that nature. In the partner system you mentioned earlier today, we could hook up a modem to the bottom of the phone. So is it a telephone or is it a modem device, But anyway, so this is sort of, I'm painting a picture here of what we run into out in the world. So now we've got this mysterious cloud, okay? The cloud is, what does the cloud mean to you? Daniel?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Just the behind the scenes type stuff,
Mm-hmm.
behind the process of everything.
That's a good answer. The cloud is sort of where things sit, okay? Whether or not Google, when you go to Google, It's where it's considered in the cloud, although it's behind a brick and mortar huge data center somewhere in the world. It's not in this building. When I go to Google, it's not in this building, okay? It's out there somewhere. I don't need to know where somewhere is. I just need to have access to it. Or if I go to Amazon, Amazon isn't in this building when I'm, looking up Amazon. It's somewhere, and it could be in 100 places out there. And if, depending on what I'm Googling or what I'm trying to buy on Amazon, there's a lot of hits, right? So the cloud is, there's more of a definition to it, but just think of, I've taken the premised equipment that I'm selling you, because I can sell you an IP office, I can sell you enterprise communication system, I can sell you, Microsoft on a server, I can sell you this on a server on premise, or I can put it up into the cloud, and maybe the cloud has additional security and things that I can't afford to pay, but they can afford to pay it, but we're just putting it somewhere else that's possibly safer, okay, and easy to access no matter where I'm at. And we're going to talk a lot more about the cloud, but just to make it simple, the cloud in this case, in a lot of cases, is the phone company, okay? Does anybody know where the phone company's central office is? Of course.
Which one?
Yeah, which one? All right. Do we know where the long distance office is? Do we know where the internet office is or whatever? We don't need to know. Let's assume that it's in the cloud someplace and it's safe and it's easy to access because I call through it all the time, and when I pick up the phone here in the building and I dial 9, I get dial tone. I don't know where I get dial tone from, but I'm getting it from a central office that's somewhere safe and secure. And let's consider that the cloud when it comes to telephone stuff, not Amazon stuff or Googly stuff, right? So so we have central office or we have a cloud hosting provider. So, like Intelisys, they sell all sorts of services. Avaya has an organization called Zang, and we sell all sorts of telephony services that fit in that cloud space. And so that's the cloud piece. So that's access. If I want to call ScanSource, I've got to come through that cloud to get here. Now, from a ScanSource perspective, when I come through that cloud, I'm going to hit a server. Okay, I'm either going to hit an IP office box or I'm going to hit a server box. And I don't know if it's an IP office or a communication manager server until I put software on it. Okay, if I say, Mr. Inside Sales Rep for ScanSource, Andrew, he's not inside sales. Who's inside sales here? None of you are. Mr. Inside Sales Rep, I need to buy a IP office V2 gateway. Okay, that's great. What level of software do you want on that gateway? Okay, so I've got the server, which is, the V2, and then I'm going to buy a particular type of software that can do all sorts of things. Or, from a IP office standpoint, I could say I want server edition because I'm going to have more than 384 users. I'm going to be able to connect multiple offices together. I'm going to do some things, and if you know IP office, you can probably say I can take into it. But right now, let's just say we're going to sell server edition. Okay, well, first off, I need a server, and then I'm going to sell them the software, which makes it server edition software. So you're always going to have the access, and then you're going to say, what kind of phones do you want, Mr. Customer? Okay, well, doesn't everybody buy IP phones? Well, I noticed that you have an IP office. It's a version 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And you do have some analog and digital. Do you want to keep those phones? I didn't know I could keep those phones. Well, in a lot of cases, you might be able to keep those phones, and then maybe next year you can buy some new phones because you told me you didn't have enough money to upgrade everything. So we could do this a little bit at a time. So I upgrade, the server and the software, and I keep the analog and digital phones because you're not quite ready. And we'll talk about what that means here in a little bit. But customers don't all have fancy schmancy brand new IP telephones. Okay, in fact, not everybody out here has fancy schmancy IP telephones. There may be some digital, although you do have a bunch of IP phones out there. But if I was to say that this phone right here The analog phone costs $39. And the digital phone costs $239, and the IP phone costs $439. And I've got a building, let's say it's a university, and I just built a student dorm, and I've got 300 people in that dorm. And I want to provide them phones because I want them to be safe. And you're going to say to me, well, everybody has a mobile phone. Why would you put phones in a building? But just follow me here. And all they're going to use the phone for is to pick up in case of an emergency. Pick up and dial 911. All right? Do I need a $239 phone, a $439 phone, or do I need a $39 phone? Well, the answer is what? A $39 telephone. And people would say, well, why does Avaya do analog and digital? That's not cutting edge. That's not bleeding edge. I'm another competitive vendor, and all we do is SIP phones, and look at us. Well, we do it because we can, and they can't do it, and that's just the way it is. So customers have reasons why they need certain types of technology, whether or not it's overhead paging, that's an analog adapter device, or they have guard shack phones that are more than 238 feet because an IP phone only runs 238 feet before I have to put in a piece of fiber that I can't afford. But I can go out 2 miles with an analog telephone. So that phone out there on the football field at the high school, that doesn't have any fiber or Ethernet, I can easily run an analog phone, and all I'm going to do is what? Pick up the phone and dial 911 in case somebody hurts themselves at the football field. So there's a lot of reasons why you might do any one of these type of technologies, and I would say that those are the things that you'll talk about. So we talk about the software and the telephones. So a mobile phone, for instance, my mobile phone, I have everything on my mobile phone that I have on my desk phone that I have on my PC. So for instance, if my phone rang right now, somebody, I don't know if it would ring or not, but if you rang my phone right now, 786-331-0679, my mobile phone would ring, my PC would ring, and my probably 2 phones at my home office would ring. So no matter what I'm doing, no matter where I'm at, I have access to you calling in because I'm customer oriented, right? Every time my phone rings, that means money. I have an opportunity to sell something, I don't hide behind my phones. I want my phone to ring, and if it's not ringing, I'm in trouble, right? If you're a salesperson, you want your phone to ring, right? Unless you're in services and support, then you don't ever want it to ring. But so whether or not you have it on your desktop and I don't need any phone, or whether or not you have it on your mobile and I don't need any other type of phone, or I just sit in my cubicle all day long and I don't want to use up minutes on my own phone, I can use any kind of telephone, and that's kind of a good news story. So customers might have a reason to have multiple types of phones in their business. So this is kind of what we talk about there. Make sense? Questions? Yeah, stories of customers that think all they need is one type of phone or another. While we're on that topic, when you go into a customer, you might have in a customer location, they might need an 8-button phone, a 12-button phone, a 16-button phone, or a phone that has a whole bunch of buttons on it because I'm a receptionist and I need to look at all the sales associates, 48 phones, 48 buttons on it. So if you were to sell a J139, which is our fanciest, newest, we'd have this 69 and 79. But would I sell a J179, our most expensive SIP phone, to everybody? No. I've got somebody that sits over in purchasing that probably never makes a phone call all day long, so I'm going to give them a J129 phone. And then I'm going to give this person who makes a few phone calls a day and doesn't need a whole lot of buttons and lights a J139 phone. And I'm going to give the fanciest color display phone that has the best speakerphone, 2-way, audio, blah, blah, blah stuff to the executive staff because they need all the blah, blah, blah. So one size does not fit all. It depends kind of what the business is doing and what you need, and they can save money by not having to buy all the most expensive phones for their business, although we'd love to sell them a lot of expensive phones. We know that's not the reality. Because someone asked me, well, why do you have so many phones? Because our customers require it, you know. One size doesn't fit all. Make sense? So, servers and software. Now, this is sort of a, we're beyond this, and it's kind of funny because, you know, some things are changing, but some things stay the same. We've been talking about virtualization and, you know, appliances versus customer provided for a while now. But to this day, customers buy their servers and, you know, from us, although they could go out and buy their own servers if they want. But if they want, you know, a comprehensive maintenance package on all their phones and their servers and their software and everything in one throat to choke, then you might buy your servers from us. But so when I talk about an Avaya appliance, it would be like, okay, you want an IP office, huh? Well, you want to provide the server, or do you want me to provide the server? Oh, you want server edition software. Okay, well that means there's a server instead of a V2, and we'll see what a V2 looks like here in a minute. It's server edition, so again, I asked you, do you want me to provide the server, or do you want to provide the server? Well, we standardized as a company, Mr. End User Customer, we've standardized on XYZ server. Well, we only have HP and Dell, you know, in the Avaya portfolio that we put software on, so I can't help you. So you'll have to go, unless you want an HP or Dell, you have to provide your own server. So there's situations where we can provide the server, you can provide the server, and when would you do that? Customer's kind of the final arbiter of what they want to do, right? We don't have any staff, you know, that knows servers and backs up servers and understands servers, and I have less than 384 stations, and, you know, I throw that number out. It can be, you know, I've got 50 users, and I don't need to get fancy. So we're going to sell you, you know, in that case, an IP office, V2, gateway. You know, we're going to provide it for you. We're going to put it on IP office. Support services, IPOS, you're going to hear that term a little bit, and it's going to be the easy button, all right? So in that case, the appliance is the IP office, the hardware, and then we'll do that. So from a virtualized software standpoint, a lot of companies now, in the past we weren't able to virtualize software. And what that means is that we can take a load of IP Office or a load of Aura software, right, and put it on customer-provided servers. It doesn't have to be a specific software, and we can virtualize it across different data centers. I'm not going to go too deep about virtualization, but just believe there's a lot of goodness in virtualization. And for instance, I can take an image of your business and I can put it over into another data center because it's virtualized and it's easy to back it up. It's easy in the event of an emergency for it to fail over, because VM and Amazon and other manufacturers of virtualized software have worked all that detail out. It's very easy. So you don't have to get all of your you're going to get the software licensing and the software file from us, but we're going to put it into a virtualized environment. Or we could just use the Avaya standard software that goes on an Avaya appliance and an Avaya gateway, and you know everything is fine, and you don't have to know anything about virtualization or servers or anything like that. Because guess what? We're a real estate business. We're not an IT business that needs to know about servers and virtualization and all that technology, you know, stuff you're talking about. But most people are looking at virtualization of their data, right? Application servers and software. So servers and software again. Normally you would have a server that handles all the routing of your voice, right? And then you might have a server that handles your voicemail, right? And then you might have a server that handles your call center if you had a call center of so many agents, you know, and you need a specific call center. And then you may have a storage server that takes all of the information that comes in for your voicemail and your call center, and we store it on a server. So that is what we would call an application. You got voice applications, you have call center applications, you got voicemail applications, and in a lot of worlds you might have email applications. You might have database applications for looking up things like Salesforce and other products like that. In ScanSource you have SAP, and that's an application that probably sits on its own server somewhere, and it's probably virtualized. So you've got application servers and software. When you hear that or see that, or if I'm a salesperson, I would say, what other applications are you running, Mr. Customer, besides voice? All right. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right. So I just grabbed this from the Google. I had an older picture, but this had a little bit more color to it. This is an IP office, right? So this is probably one of the few product type, slides that I'll show. But the cool thing about an IP office, we have competitors in that mid-market space, and you'll learn from some slides we're going to do here in a little bit. You're going to learn there's, the enterprise, mid-market, and SME. So mid-market we kind of define as about 3,000 stations, telephones, and below. And IP office fits very nicely in that 3,000 category. If you are doing just pure SIP trunks and pure SIP telephones, which we realized was kind of like that internet stuff that comes in and it doesn't take any cards and all of that, I don't need any gateways to plug in analog phones or digital phones or IP phones or overhead paging or music on hold devices, all that. Music on hold doesn't come from God. Music on hold is a device, could be a Radio Shack device that you set in the room and you plug it into that port right there, and when I hit the hold button you're going to hear whatever's playing on the recorder, right? And a lot of customers, it's kind of funny. Go ahead, question.
What's the feature key?
Where is that one at?
The smart card slot for the feature key on the left?
A feature key may provide additional features over and above, what comes with the base system, right? Yeah, it tells the system possibly what level of IP office it is, that type of thing, right? A reset button, you don't want to press that, obviously. The point is that if I had a pure IP or SIP environment, I wouldn't necessarily need gateways unless I want to do things like interface with paging, and I want to interface with that analog phone that's going out to the guard shack or the football field, or I want to use some analog trunks that would go into any one of these slots up here or back here. So there's a reason why you might need a gateway, because you're not just pure SIP. All right. So, you'll see orders that come in that have modules and, have V2 gateway on it and telephones and things like that. And this is what you'll visualize when you're looking at the material code on the bill of materials, right? Make sense? That's almost telling you how to build the watch there. Didn't want to go too deep there. Now, this is an older slide, and as IP Office starts to mature, the only point I wanted to make here is that there's different levels of software. Not only have we decided that we want IP Office, but now we have to decide whether or not we want Essential, Preferred, or Server Edition. Okay, and within Essential, Preferred, or Server Edition, because that determines the scale of the system itself, we're going to say, what features do you need, Mr. Customer? Well, I've got a handful of mobile workers. I've got a bunch of office workers that need to integrate with Outlook and other, email type stuff. And, you know, I've got a power user that needs everything you can throw at them because they're just they use mobile phones, they work from home, they integrate to Outlook, they do all of these type of features. So when you sell, and this is a cloud thing, when you sell IP Office Cloud, and every phone on the IP Office Cloud is pretty much a power user. Mark, you can correct me, you have 2 levels of software, right? Power user and? Standard? Yeah. So and I think standard would probably be more like mobile worker, you know? Yeah. But anyway, you can do everything on it. So when we're talking about server software, we decided IP Office. We decided, maybe down lower here, we decided Preferred Edition because it's just a small phone system. And we decided in Preferred, we're going to give them only these features right here that we want. Okay, so that's the server and software type of thing. Any questions? Make sense? Clear as mud? Yeah?
Good.
Good, all right. Now this kind of just reinforces what we talked about before, except we go into the enterprise, and this is an older slide because it's only talking about VMware. When we first came out with virtualization, we did all of our testing and rollout with VMware software, virtualization software by VMware for our Aura platform. So there's the software, there's the hardware that we're putting on VMware, and then we actually have something called a pod FX. And what a pod FX is, and unless you see it on an order that's coming through and all that, you probably won't deal a whole lot with it, except for if you're building your own cloud. You know, you love ScanSource Cloud, but we've decided to build our own cloud. We may build our own virtualized environment, and what pod FX does is it takes everything that you need, and it also gives you backup and storage and servers and software and everything in a single cabinet that's pre-programmed, and we roll it in, set it up, turn it on, and hand it off to you. Very simple from that standpoint. And, you know, we get 2 or 3 of them a week, a month, a quarter, and those could be tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, depending on, what they're doing. You know, from a pod standpoint, that's not an Avaya term. Pod is a term, an industry term that whether or not you're HP or Dell or Microsoft or whatever, they sell pods, and what it is it's all a pre-configured system that you don't have to, that's all managed with an interface that's very easy to roll out in the enterprise, right? Yeah. All right. Well, I spent a lot of time on that one slide where we showed the telephones and the mobile and all of that type of thing. So we'll kind of bounce through these because we're probably hitting up against the first break, right? Yes. So when we talked about, let me go here a second. Okay, so we talked about the telephones. So we're talking about SMB now. How we define, Avaya defines SMB different than maybe our competitors define SMB, but in most circles, SMB would be either 50 stations or below or 100 stations and below. So you think of a company, especially if you're a company owner and you have 100 humans show up every day to work, you don't feel too small, do you? I mean, you're responsible for 100 people. But if I'm an owner and I've got 3,000 people showing up every day, I'm not as small as, and I would think that 100 would be small compared to where I'm at. But this is just a way to go to market, a way to build software for a particular market, a way to price things and a way to support things and all that. So the industry does break down, whether it's Avaya and others, into SME, mid-market, or enterprise. So what we normally think of companies that are less than 100 stations, square, key, or 9. You remember where I said You know, we have analog trunks because I look at my phone and I got 3 lines and I see 2 of them are flashing, so I'm going to push the 3rd line to make a call. Or I've got 10 lines and 9 of them are flashing and I'm going to press, you know, button 10 so I can make an outgoing call. Those are square key systems. And then, you know, if I only have a 12-button phone but I've got 16 lines, I might have to program my phone system to dial 9 so that I can access those pool of trunks because I don't have enough buttons on my phone. So that kind of turns it into a dial 9 access, you know. So button line appearances, smaller phone systems have plenty, you know, you got buttons that you can actually, you know, I've got 10 buttons so I can have 10 lines and it's very simple. Mid-market where you can go up to, you know, hundreds of lines and you've got thousands of users, you know, people in your business, you won't have button line appearances. It doesn't make any sense. It's just a waste of buttons. Unless you had a small group of 3 people over here and 4 people over there and I want to have your button on my phone. You know, you could be in a large enterprise and have button line appearances, but generally you don't. Doesn't make any sense. You start to get into things like presence. Does everybody, you know what presence is? I can look on my PC and I can pull up a piece of software and I can see if you're on the phone or not. Or I can, you know, I want to IM you and I can see that, you know, you're available or not available, that type of thing. That's what we're doing these days instead of a whole bunch of buttons showing if you're on the phone. You know, I can get your status or your presence. Very simple and to configure and support. Most businesses that are 50 stations and below, 100 stations and below, whatever, in the SME business, do not have IT departments. Either the owner or the owner's wife or the, you know, or somebody is doing the IT, or they're picking up the phone and calling somebody to come out and fix the phone system. Is that true? Is that what you run into? Yep. You know, there's not, yeah, they're usually outsourcing that kind of stuff because they're good at making pizzas, not about fixing phones, right?
We become their IT department.
That's right, you know, and that's good business.
So what is it that you mean by just as sophisticated as what, but not leveraged?
So let's say, for instance, I have an IP office and it's 100 stations. Okay, that IP office could have all sorts of features where I'm integrating to Microsoft. I can have SIP telephones. I can do all sorts of technology from call centers that have social media coming into them, you know, and all of that. But usually what we find out in that smaller space, they're not leveraging the sophistication that phone system has. So depending on what level of software you sold them, you might have sold them the whole left side of the menu, but they're not going to use it because they have no need for it. But it can do that. The IP office is a very, very, very sophisticated system, even in the SME space. And that's a competitive differentiator when we're looking at competitors in that space, the things that phone system can do that others can't do on a single box. So these are some of the things that we do that are just built into the IP office, you know, or what we call our SME product. Built-in conferencing. I don't have to buy a conferencing bridge. Other people might have to, you know, to conference, you know, 50 people together or 100 people or, you know, whatever the amount is that you're looking to do a conference for a webinar. It's built-in. Built-in voicemail, built-in web management, auto attendance. Some phone systems, these are features that you have to buy from other vendors that are built into the IP office. Now, can we have a more sophisticated voicemail that you have to pay a little bit more for? Yes. You know, if you go from standard hunt groups, which is kind of like a call comes in and it starts with you and then it goes to you and you, or we send calls around. If you need something more sophisticated and more, can we upgrade that? Yes, you can. You know, so there's some more sophistication that you can sell, but the basic system in our SME mid-market or our SME IP office is pretty darn sophisticated out of the box. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a real competitive differentiator.